Hello and welcome to the Schooner Pod. This is the first episode of something we're trying out called the Coach Composites, where we basically take a look at each era of just a bunch of OU head coaches. And you know what? Let's start with the most recent one, the 22nd head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners, Lincoln Riley, who served at OU from 2017 to 2021, as you all obviously know. Had a good record. Brought OU to three college football playoffs. No wins, no victories. And left obviously where we all consider him to be, as people have called him, the bitch out west. But we're not here to harp on him. We're not here to rip on him all the way. We're here to give an honest, complete summary of what happened in what were ultimately some really exciting times at OU. You know, we're gonna talk about, you know, some of the best games, some of the worst games, best players, sneaky good players, and you know, maybe take a little trip down the, you know, what ifs. So I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me today, we got Jameson, we got Ty, and yeah. So first things first, before we really dive into this, Jameson, all things considered, I'm gonna ask this question, you know, really for all of these coaches going forward. Did Lincoln Riley leave OU in a better spot than when he entered it?
Yes, I think he did. And because of, and I don't know how much it was of him. Obviously, his offense had a great impact on us, but I think the clout that the back-to-back Heisman brought of Baker and Kyler was huge for our reputation. You know, we were, we're a blue blood team, but we're not a tier A team in college football right now. But even though we weren't succeeding in the playoffs with him, that clout and that recruiting pitch put us in the news and gave us a lot of legitimacy. So I think that is huge for our future moving forward, just to be able to say, look how many Heisman winners we've had in the past, and look, we had back-to-back quarterbacks #1 picks in the draft.
Ty, your thoughts?
Yeah, so hello, everyone. I'm actually recording live from Norman.
Oh, no.
And fun fact for our podcast listeners, but I kind of concur with Jameson. So I've been vocal about this. I love to toot my own horn about this fact. I've been, since before he left, saying that there has been a decline in sort of performance from Stoops to Riley. Obviously, there's some natural oscillations in sort of performance, but I think at the most realistic estimation is that on the field performance sort of maintained. Statistically, there is, you know, a decline there, and who knows, that may have been more pronounced as time went on. But I concur with Jameson that I think he left us in a better position than he got us, because he sort of reinvigorated the recruiting and the reputation, like Jameson mentioned. So the on the field performance was broadly the same either way, but coming in and sort of reinvigorating that image of Oklahoma. And, you know, I don't think it's maybe necessarily just him, because there was a lot of other non-head coach things that occurred in his tenure, such as facilities renovations and all sorts of other things that all play into that, you know, that were initiated under Stoops. So I'm not sure who you want to credit for those things, because the head coach, you know, those are occurring regardless of who the coach is. But I think we are in a better position than we were when he took over. And I think, you know, the rose-colored glasses will continue to get rosier as time goes on, especially when he just absolutely bombs at USC and is abysmal, and then we don't feel as bad.
Yeah, it's tricky, because I'll put it this way. I feel like it's a different question if you consider him, you know, when he entered OU as OC, absolutely, without a doubt, revitalized that offense, revitalized a program that was really very close to, you know, becoming, you know, a second tier in its own conference. You And then as a head coach, did do a lot to build recruiting, did do a lot to, add a lot of shine, even though things went poorly on a lot of ends, strength and conditioning, as we've talked about ad nauseum, complacency. He was not a perfect head coach by any means, but at the end of the day, what he left, was clearly good enough for him to attempt to try to nuke and then pilfer whatever he left to USC. He built something off the back of what Bob Stoops did, ran with it, modernized it. In some ways didn't do it great, but it was something where, look, the program took as big of a hit as it did, but also had, the ability of Brent Venables to really scrape it together and still have it stand on what it is, for that recruiting class to stand up as it is. I think we're in a better place than we were in 2017. Just in terms of the type of guys we had, in terms of the prestige, the bigger names out there. Obviously, adding 2 Heisman winners, the playoff prestige, all of that's huge. He just wasn't the guy to get us over that kind of final hump, I don't think. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The jury's still out, but let's go ahead, dive into Lincoln Riley's career, and let's just start with this. Jameson, in your mind, what was the best game of the Lincoln Riley era?
And so this is kind of personal experience too, because you got to kind of think of how was it as a fan and how great did it feel after the game. And since I went to the majority of these big time games and home games, I think it's the Ohio State plant the flag Baker. Even though it wasn't a postseason you won, the feeling after that was absolutely wild. And yes, Baker planting the flag, some people would be like, oh yeah, it was bad sportsmanship, blah, blah, blah. But it felt great at the time. It was such a great game. And overcoming adversity of them beating us that year before, was great.
Yeah, because that's mine as well. I think it's the easy number one in my mind. I think you could argue Lincoln peaked after this. It was an immaculate offensive performance. The team came out ready, fired up, and honestly, like, after the just total shit show we saw in Norman the year before, where you got blown off the field, they looked less motivated. They looked scared. They looked just kind of shrank away from that challenge. To have them go in, beat Ohio State in Columbus, it was a real moment that it's like, this team is here. They're for real. Just truly, just incredible stuff. But yeah, Jameson, I think he kind of peaked after that, if you really think about it. I don't think there's a single win outside, like, that topped Ohio State. Now, some of that has to do with opponents, whatever. Obviously he had his moments in playoff games that he just didn't get, but Ohio State, that was the moment that all of us were believing for sure.
Well, yeah, that definitely was a peak, because if you look 2017, that was the season for us. Obviously, the season that was supposed to be great was this last season. We saw how that panned out, with Spencer Rattler flopping and Lincoln Riley having a foot out the door. But 2017 was the other season. That was Baker's season to go crazy. The amount of pieces that we had around him. That was the year for us, looking in retrospect, to do well. And Ohio State in the second game of the season, coming out and winning the game that we were worried about the most, obviously was a huge feather in our cap.
Ty, I'm going to get to you in a second, but Jameson, I want to ask, did you think we had a chance of winning when you packed up your car to head to Columbus? Because I kind of didn't, but I was excited anyways. I felt like I was driving. Me and my group were driving into the jaws of death, but we still didn't care. We were there to watch OU Ohio State. We were hype. Were you optimistic at all going into this?
I was mildly optimistic. Obviously, I was a little bit worried. Ohio State had a good team, and they were number 2 in the nation at that time, but they weren't unbeatable. JT Barrett, good quarterback, but I'm not I'm shaking in my boots. It's JT Barrett on the other side of the ball. Much better Ohio State quarterbacks have gone through. J.K. Dobbins was good at running back, but the same thing. they had a really good, solid team with a lot of good weapons. I think Paris Campbell was the wide receiver too. That was really good for him. But no guys I was like, okay, this guy I'm really worried about. Saying like that Georgia game later that year, I'm like, oh gosh, Nick Chubb is going to work us. And I'm so worried about Nick Chubb. With the Ohio State team, they just had a lot of solid players, but I wasn't like, oh, this guy's just going to beat us to a pulp.
They were also, I think, really solid defensively. You know, you had Denzel Ward out there. You had Bosa, the less good Bosa. So, I mean,
it was. They're pretty comparable now.
That's true. They're pretty good. That's a good point. I'll take that back. But, it just felt like, for me, it was my favorite OU football game of all time, without a doubt. And, you know, even though I'm pissed at Lincoln, even though I still hate the move, he did kind of give us, you know, one of my favorite OU football memories. So I appreciate him for that one. My favorite thing he did in that, maybe not favorite, but one of the funnier dumb things is him constantly putting out Kyler Murray and faking a Baker Mayfield injury. That was always funny. But Ty, your favorite OU game under Lincoln Riley and why?
Yeah, so that I gotta say that is a really, really good one that you guys brought out. Not even to be different, I sort of had this one pegged from the start, and a lot of people right away I think are gonna know it. It's an iconic college football game, especially now. And we'll just start. The date was October 22nd, 2016. Most people should know already. Week 8, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes. That is just an iconic matchup, and I love the absolute just the shootouts. I love the just straight to the wall, like we're gonna go all out. Like it, there was defense being played, but like Patrick Mahomes had 89 attempts and like 730 something yards. Baker, much fewer attempts. We were a much better rounded team offensively. That's why we ended up carrying the day, but just so many records set, 78 first downs across the teams. And there would have been more, but there were just so many explosive plays too. I don't have it pulled up. It just came to me as I'm talking. I should have researched how many 20 plus yard plays there were in that game. It was like watching a highlight reel, but it was a game. And I know there's a lot of people that hate those games, that hate those, we'll call it a no defense game. Just hate those, like the offense, just everything they're doing is working. And it's just, almost like a PK shootout in touchdown form. But I love it. And I think it perfectly encapsulates the sort of the Lincoln Riley era, because that's what we were known for, is, hey, we're going to take Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts out of here, and we're just going to try to gun it. And the defense, I guess they come out, well, with Lincoln Riley, they came out 3/4 of the time because we couldn't get anyone off the field. But, we're going to throw the defense, whatever. The defense exists just to give us a commercial break for our quarterback to rest up so we can just continue to do just the wildest, most novel, most gimmicky, or whatever you want to call it stuff. But that OU Texas Tech game to me is got to be my favorite. Had I gone to the Ohio State game, like you all got to, who knows? That one was super special. There were a lot of super special, super neat games, but that one to me, and as it continues to be sort of relevant as those two guys, Mahomes and Baker are starting QBs and have. The NFL's doing their best to kind of promote that as sort of a rivalry when they play. Obviously, the teams are a little mismatched, but to me, that 2016 OU Texas Tech, I go back and watch the highlights from that sometimes. So I love that game.
I'll put it this way: I think that game is one of the rare football games that was way more enjoyable to rewatch or to watch from home than it was to actually be there. I was up there, one of the worst games I've ever been at. I hated watching that.
It was kind of foggy, wasn't it?
It was foggy, and if you've ever been to Jones AT&T Stadium in Lubbock, specifically in the OU section, they stick you in the upper deck in the corner, behind the only video board in the entire stadium. So you have no video. You have no replay whatsoever because there's only one video board. The other one is this rickety old double T, like analog, crappy. Yeah, like a high school video, like scoreboard, so you can't see what's going on. Me and friend of the podcast, Thomas Barrett, were up there. People were trying to fight us. It was just a total, even in the OU section, a total disaster.
The other OU fans are trying to fight you.
There were just these random locals who were trying to pose as OU fans. It was awful. But in retrospect, it was like that is a historic moment. Baker Mayfield threw for 545 yards. Joe Mixon ran for two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Baker on not that many attempts, 36 attempts for.
Yeah.
Like he was averaging 15 yards per attempt, which is crazy on 36 attempts.
7 touchdowns. Joe Mixon ran for 263 and then chipped in 114 through the air, or from receiving. It was just a total mess of a game, and we're not even going to talk about Mahomes and his 734 passing yards. Just a nightmare to be Mike Stoops for sure. But I agree that is definitely one of the more memorable ones, even though he was OC at the time. Obviously, just what a game, and it was Baker's return to Tech, his only game in Lubbock as a Sooner. So just as a whole, just super memorable.
Kind of been
horrible,
rules, but yeah.
Oh, it's okay. There are no. We can make there are arbitrary rules that we ourselves made. So we don't need to bend them. We can just say whatever we want. But yeah, that was a good one. So, couple honorable mentions. 2017 TCU I thought was excellent. Both the game in Norman and the Big 12 title really showed up well. The 2018 West Virginia game. Jameson. That insane Friday night in Morgantown. The 2 defensive touchdowns saved our ass. And then the Big 12 title with OU Texas, that redemption. Really good pair of games for our first season of the Schooner Pod, honestly. Those were fun to cover.
What about the Baylor comeback?
I was about to say, 2019 Baylor comeback. Ty, you and I had a good time on that one.
Yeah. A forgotten part of that game, the return and the redemption of the Schooner. They didn't do it fully, but he got his straight across run at AT&T. I love OU games in AT&T, and yeah, shout out to the game planners. We're talking about the 2019 Big 12 championship here. Shout out to the planners for selling Baylor boxes right behind the OU student section. Recipe for disaster, but also a recipe for lifetime memories. So.
I mean, incredible stuff. We witnessed, just like we saw, in this year's Bedlam, how they picked up the personal foul. We witnessed someone we witnessed the security people reverse an ejection. It was beautiful stuff.
I never in my life have I seen the police remove someone from an event, and then while they were taking them out, have that person talk them out of it and allow them back into the venue. Legendary move.
Absolutely legendary for sure. 2020 Cotton Bowl, have that on there. I thought that was his, only good. It was his only bowl win, but it was great stuff. And then 2021 Texas, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in depth as we go on. But we talked about the good. Let's talk about the bad. This is something you all want to talk about for sure because it's very fun. Oh boy, there is some bad to poke through. A lot of the bad is very similar. Jameson, what is your worst Lincoln Riley era game?
This is hard for me because taking it at the definition of the worst Lincoln Riley era game is 2017 Iowa State. But what was the worst for me? It's got to be 2019 LSU. Even though we had Jalen Hurts, that game hurt so bad. I understand. I'm taking a lot of this from personal experience. Another game that I was at. Every single time in the damn Peach Bowl that Joe Burrow threw a touchdown, they had this train horn go, and I'm sitting there after touchdown 6 and just palms in face. Oh my God, if I hear another train freaking horn. But guess what? 63 points, 9 touchdowns. I heard that horn 9 times for LSU, and it sucked. But there are so many bad games that we can talk about too. But that one, obviously, I felt the most pain for.
LSU was awful. I was there as well. I I gotta say, right after the CeeDee Lamb almost touchdown, I did yell at a bunch of LSU fans. I was like, "Oh, y'all thought it was gonna be easy, didn't you?" And then it was. It was so easy. But look, I'll put it this way: we all expected to lose that game going into it. Just with the suspensions, to
That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
it was
had
just
it not
overall,
been
it was
for-
like the worst
Had
game.
it not
There
been
was
for
so
those
much pain.
suspensions, we would have blown them out. Would have
Oh,
been
Right.
77.
Trajan Bridges at safety would have came in and knocked people out.
hey Buki did his best. He knocked himself out, but
You would have metaphorically pistol whipped them.
oh no, yeah, no, it was that was a bad game. But my thing with Lincoln and my worst memories of Lincoln are the games where we had leads and just pissed them away to just crap opponents. It's hard to pick just one, but Iowa State 2017 was kind of that first moment where it's like, what the hell's going on? We had a really big lead. With Baker and crew, all Crimson Rough Riders is what everyone blamed it on. But honestly, the fact that they gave up that lead and blew it, just completely unacceptable to me. But you take that one, you could apply the exact same thing to Kansas State in 2019, Kansas State in 2020, for example. It just unexcusable, unacceptable. Performances up big. Those for me are it. But I don't know. The one that'll stick with me, and it was an all-time classic. It wasn't the worst loss by in terms of deficit. I'll never get over that Rose Bowl. That was unacceptable to me. I just always in my mind will be really tough. I don't know. I'll take it back. I'm going to go Iowa State 2017. That's the worst one because it also gave us Matt Campbell forever. So,
Yeah, by the definition, by far the worst one. Like the whole game of how it played out. It was very painful afterwards, but obviously we still recovered. So I can push that to the back of the list. But at the time, it felt miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. Because most of those we did recover from and win a Big 12. But Ty, what is your bottom? What is your least favorite win?
So for me, the way I'm looking at it, and this is going to explain my answer, is there was a lot of very disappointing performances. But for me, and the way I'm looking at it, it's what was on the line, but also what could have been, and sort of foreshadowing. I think we're going to get into what could have been here in a few minutes, but. Jameson talks about, he talked about that OU LSU playoff game. And, like we all said, there wasn't really a realistic expectation of OU winning. So while a national playoff or a national championship, slot was at stake there, which is the most that's been at stake in the Lincoln Riley era, it's not realistic to say that it could have been. And that kind of leads me to mine. And Bobby, you kind of touched on it. It's that 2017 OU versus Georgia Rose Bowl, because I feel like that one, the most that's ever been on the line under Lincoln Riley, which is a seat in the national championship, and two, we very much could have and most probably should have won that game. And to me, that's what makes that one the most crushing. I understand there were more disappointing, because that was, I don't even recall, we may have actually even been the underdog there. Going into that game, I know there were a lot worse performances against double-digit underdogs and other things in the regular season, and I'm a big proponent of things are always at stake every game, but that OU Georgia game, that was sort of our, that 2017 OU team, it's just everything. We were an underdog. It was peak Baker Mayfield, and it's what will always stick with me as the quintessential Lincoln Riley season at OU is that 2017 season. In that game that I firmly believe we very easily could have won. Obviously, Kirby Smart is no slouch. We've seen that this past year, and my boy Jake Fromm, and then also Nick Chubb, who's playing alongside Baker now, and a whole host of other really great players that Georgia had. And I don't think we would have won the national championship, but for me, that that was the most crushing one, because I really felt like that was the one that we should have gotten a playoff win. We were gonna get it. We were there, and then that's what makes it to me just as another quintessential Lincoln Riley thing is whenever during the game and whenever you watch it back, the one thing that everyone points to, and I don't think it's unfair at all, I think it's very realistic, very accurate, as everyone points to the Lincoln Riley play calling is what lost us that game when we got up, and then with an absurd amount of time on the clock and an absurdly small lead for as conservative as we were playing. So that was that to me it was the most crushing one. I know it was crushing for you, but Bobby, you and I watched it together. Actually, I think it was just us and our significant others. I think we got
and Blake
on by a lot of people.
And Blake. Blake was also there, and he loved every minute of it.
Every single time he probably went, "Come on, come on, come on, come on!"
Oh yeah, no, he was loving the meltdown. I mean, just think about how fun that first half was. We were riding, we were doing great. The offense was clicking. Baker ran the Philly special before the Philly special was a thing. It was beautiful, and then that damn squib kick, it was all decision making. It was all conservative bullshit. The squib kick is what a lot of people focus on, but really it was the first part of what went wrong. That second half, the offensive play calling was so pedantic. Georgia was able to get all of that momentum back. And then you go to overtime, you 4th and 1, taking that field goal instead of trying to go get that extra yard and try to, really put your, foot on their throats. I feel like that is probably a mistake. You can't win football games being patient, being cautious. You can't win championships. You can't win playoff games like that. It just doesn't work. And
not in college.
And of course,
in college.
No.
In the NFL, maybe you get up that much at that time and can start to be conservative, but not in college. Not that year. Not when you're the underdog that's relying on just chippiness and everything else. We have a viewer comment by Pump Your Brakes here that Bobby threw up. Would Lincoln Riley be our head coach if we won the 2018 Rose Bowl? I don't think so. I think Lincoln Riley got addicted to losing in the Rose Bowl stadium, and that's why he went to USC, where he can lose there more frequently.
That's funny. Yeah, I'll say this, and it kind of leads into what if we don't squib? What if we get that win?
Yeah,
I think we win the national title because we would be just bad
All
enough.
Right.
Here's the thing: we would have won the national title because we would have been just bad enough where Alabama keeps Jalen Hurts in, and Jalen Hurts Bama was a very beatable Bama. Now, Tua Bama, that's not a beatable Bama. But I think OU would have found a way to get that win there. And to kind of answer, Pump Your Blake's question here, I don't think he probably would have been gone to the NFL by then for sure. I would say, but at some point. He would have tried to run it back.
He'd be at the Panthers.
But I think you'd see him as the Cowboys head coach instead of Mike McCarthy, is my guess. Or, out in Arizona instead of Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know. Jameson, what's your take on that?
I agree. I think if Lincoln had more success earlier in his career, he would have moved on just around the same timeline, or maybe even a little earlier to the NFL. Because obviously making the move from USC to OU shows that he has higher thoughts of what he can do. And we've always heard the rumors over and over that he's got pro on his mind. And most coaches do. There's few rare breeds that just stick with college their whole career, but it burns you out. And recruiting is fun when you're young, but it's hard to stick with throughout. It's, they always say 24/7, 365. NFL, you can take breaks. College, you can't. Even during the dead periods, you can't take a break. So honestly, being a college head football coach would be absolutely exhausting. And trying to find a way to get a big paycheck in the NFL should always be the goal.
For sure. And, Pump Your Blakes, by the way, he, we're in the same little Twitter group, little DM thing. he actually kind of had a really good idea to do this, so shout out to him for that. But I also want to give him a shout out here for another good one. What is the worst win we had that we had no business winning to basically Tulane 2021? We always should have won Tulane. It shouldn't have been that close. The worst win in the Lincoln Riley era has to be Kansas. We almost lost to Kansas this year in 2021. That is the most ridiculous, preventable game I've seen in my life. We railed on it whenever it came up. And, to have him immediately go into the whole, we're close, all that, it really makes you think, like, this guy might not have been the killer we need. You have to be a killer. Jameson, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's the obvious answer. I mean, you can talk about Army in 2018, but like that was a good team and they played us really well. So we obviously had our faults during that game, but I mean, that was another disappointing squeak out win. That seemed to happen a lot during this era. Here and there, we had just kind of weird Big 12 games that kind of all blend together in my brain. But Kansas, I think by far is the easiest answer to that one.
You could honestly go with like half of the 2021 schedule, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't like. I was not a big fan of Bedlam 2018 when Corn Dog almost beat us.
Yes, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I miss Corn Dog.
Our guy 1982 Boomer Sooner was big on it, but it was an epic game. Don't get me wrong, but man, after the amount of trash you and I talked on Corn Dog that season of the Schooner Pod, I was so mad that it got as close as it did, for sure. But yeah, no, 2018 Army sucked, especially because half of the people watching it were watching it through Periscope, and someone's they're watching the game. Someone was recording it on their phone with someone's foot. Yeah. In the background,
Twitch, or maybe it was Periscope. That's how I watched it.
What was the one recording? I don't know if it was OU football. It might have been like a UFC fight, or they were watching. I think it was the Conor McGregor fight or something, where they were watching through the reflection of some dude's glasses.
Yeah, that was a UFC thing.
Oh my god, that's so bad. That's so bad.
For mine, there's a lot of 2017. Red River comes to mind, right? Because I think Texas was unranked even. And I understand, throw the book out, throw the records out, throw the rankings out for that game. But that one was pretty disappointing. And I love, honestly, probably in the offseason, because we're kind of struggling for content here and there, a Sam Ehlinger versus OU. I know it's weird to sort of base something around an opposing player, but just Sam Ehlinger was sort of the ultimate villain for the Lincoln Riley era. And Sam Ehlinger versus OU, the sort of series would be a great podcast segment. That one comes to mind, but I gotta say it's Army, because in the grand scheme of things, right? That was Army. I think they lost 2 games that year, so OU won, and we didn't really do anything with that win, right? It was almost insignificant. It was held against us. Even the fact that we won, it was still held against us. And it was early enough in the season, I feel like we could have lost it, and it wouldn't really have impacted OU season at all. I really think OU could have lost that game and ended up in the exact same spot as they did. But had Army won, it would have been a game changer. Because who knows, like the butterfly effect for Army. You're talking about a 1-loss Army, maybe even an undefeated Army that year. They were legitimately good that year. And I think that one is the worst OU win, because I don't want to root against OU. I'm a known Service Academy guy, but I'm a diehard Navy fan. So you won't catch me rooting for Army almost ever. But I really think had Army won that one and OU lost it, it wouldn't have impacted OU at all. And it would have made a world of difference for Army. And it would have been a legendary season. Who knows what could have happened there, because that team was so good and so novel in their approach and their ball control and their time of possession dominance, that who knows what could have happened there. So for me, that's the worst one. And that kind of bleeds into what could have been as well. And it's not even OU centric, but that's the worst loss, because I don't think it impacted. OU got hurt by winning that one just because it was so poor. So to me, the Army one is the one that sticks out.
Yeah, I think the Army one was, but that was such a good team. That Texas game, I think, was a pretty good point for this question. We were up 20-0. Y'all remember we were up 20-0 in the second quarter, on top of the world. Come around the fourth quarter, we're losing. We're losing after being up 20-0 in a Red River rivalry. Come on.
That was an awful one, and I know we've mostly been talking about head coaching Lincoln Riley moments, but 1982 Boomer Sooner in the comments here on YouTube. Check us out live if you're watching on Spotify, by the way. Brought up 2015 Texas. They were 1-4. That was that was awful. That if we're talking coordinators, like Lincoln, that was truly probably the worst Lincoln game by far. Anyways, that's all we kind of have for the worst. But let's ask about this, because we have the best, we have the worst. But what game brought both of them together? And if you had to pick one game that really summarized the Lincoln Riley at OU experience, what would it be, Jameson?
Ooh, do I want to take a positive or negative angle? Because to be completely honest with you, I had written down some negative stuff beforehand. Talking about blown leads and underperforming on the big stage. But also, there's a lot of good positive moments. We talk about there's a lot of moments where we came back and had big wins, and we kind of already talked about it. But putting it all, like a bow, like on everything, the most like stereotypical prototype Lincoln Riley game, I think, was Alabama 2018 Orange Bowl. And this is why. Because we had a very talented team. We had a Heisman quarterback. That was the talk of the nation. Kyler Murray, one of the most athletic quarterbacks or players to ever step foot on a college football field. But then whenever we go up against the big dogs in SEC Alabama, we just get manhandled. We have no chance. Even though we had all these skill players, all this clout, all of this, people talking about Lincoln Riley and his offensive system in the news, we go and get humbled by a team like Alabama, who has big guys who have a good strength and conditioning program, as well as recruit big 300-plus pounders on that line that can just bully us the whole time. So I think by far that is the definition of Lincoln Riley, of all clout the whole season with Kyler Murray, Heisman back-to-back, great offensive system. But whenever it comes down to the big game, you get humbled really quickly.
Well, going down quick and then having to scrap your way back and try to figure things out, but it not being enough.
But the scrapping was just, I feel like Alabama just was kind of letting off the gas. Like, you could see it clearly. Like, us getting back into that game, and we weren't back in the game, but like scoring more points in the game was feeling like, oh, thank you, Alabama. That was nice. I didn't feel like we earned it.
It's almost like, like the allegory of the cave. Like, it's like, yeah, we're keeping it close. We're fighting our way back. But, at any time, Tua can go down and just, like, go in and just drop it on you. Just, we were never really that close because the defense was bad. Because there's nothing we could have done about that defense in that moment. So I like that. It's probably not mine. But Ty, what would you say is the one game that really, summarized the Lincoln Riley experience at OU?
Yeah, so I really feel like, and I feel like this one is pretty off the wall, and I didn't necessarily do that on purpose, but I feel like it encapsulates the good and the bad. So the good is the just ridiculously explosive offensive performance, and then the bad is just, why are these people hanging with us? Why can't we put this team away? Why are we letting this team score so much on us? And I feel like that represents, or that could describe so many Lincoln Riley OU games, which is why I think this is going to be completely off the wall. And you could almost pick one at random and produce this. So for me, not necessarily at random, but I got to go with, and I know this is a super, super weird one, 2018 OU at West Virginia. West Virginia was a ranked team. They were, I think, 12 in this game. We ended up winning 59-56. We were at 6 coming into it. And it was just a wild game. It was 14-14 in the first half. We got 21. They got 14 in the second. OU, even under Bob Stoops, no matter who the OC is, Lincoln Riley as a head coach, as an OC, whatever, OU, for some reason, is cursed in the third quarter. We never outscore anyone in the third quarter, it seems like. And then we cleaned it back up in the fourth and took the win. And it was a Kyler Murray game. He was 20 for 27, 4 touchdowns for 360 something yards. Just a stereotypical Lincoln Riley game. And I feel like there were so many games that just could have fit the bill that I described. Explosive offense, neat plays, high scoring, but also I think West Virginia was a little overranked coming into that one. For sure. I know on the rankings alone, it looks like it was a not that mismatch of a game, but I feel like there's so many. But to me, that one for some reason I just have memories of watching that game, and Kyler Murray is always fun to watch, and that to me, I think there are so many you could pick, but I think it's really funny that you can just sort of pull from a hat, and almost all of them will be a stereotypical Lincoln Riley OU experience. Obviously, we also, I don't want to denigrate it and say that we didn't have our ridiculous blowouts, because we did here and there, but to me, that one, both teams scoring in the 50s, and I alluded to that earlier. I love the shootouts, but yeah, 2018 OU West Virginia.
Legendary night for OU. I loved it. I can't say it summarized OU because we did have 2 defensive touchdowns, and that was a bit of a rarity, but I'll put it here's mine. And I really liked Pumpier Blake's, what he had to say here as well about 2020. His quintessential one is 2020 with that insane, back and forth, blown lead. Mine is also at OU Texas. Now, entering this, mine was going to actually be OU Texas 2021. Because you had that deep hole that we crawled our way back from, and you got the happy ending at the end. Just a legendary game. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like if we're really summarizing Lincoln Riley, it's got to be 2018. Again, 2018, all 3 of us have picked games from that year. But the 2018 Texas game, where, it starts out kind of close, maybe not really. And then Texas goes on a run. OU's dead in the water. And then Kyler Murray, the skill, the ability of that, truly one of our best players ever, brings us back from the dead. But at the end, it's not enough. And we get Dicker the kickered. And it sums so much up. Think about how many seasons we've had where, we wait to do our homework. We get halfway through and we're down. We try to make a miraculous rush back, but at the end, it's just not enough. That is Lincoln Riley. That is OU in a nutshell. It was flashy. It was incredible. It was wonderful. There were times where we were down bad, but we scraped our way back. But at the very end, they just didn't have enough to finish the job. And that was 2018. That was 2018 OU Texas, without a doubt. And, maybe if Lincoln left, on a high note, it would have been, this past year's OU Texas. But at the end of the day, the Lincoln Riley chapter, it will never have a good ending. We're never gonna look back fondly on it. It's not. I God bless Switzer for all he did, even though he left on a really bad note. Having your starting quarterback arrested for slinging cocaine, not great. But at the end of the day, he wanted to do what he could do for OU and did the best for OU, and we welcomed it back. Lincoln tried to burn this thing down. It's probably not going to be... His exit's never going to be remembered fondly. And that's just kind of a fact. But, if we take a look at the whole career, it's OU Texas 2018 for me. But anyways.
Leaving to go to the Cowboys, which a lot of Sooner fans are Cowboys fans, and then winning a Super Bowl there and then retiring is very different than leaving midseason to go to another college job.
He could have taken a way better path there, but Okay, we're going to touch on a couple of our favorite players. We've talked a lot about Lincoln seasons, games, but I wanted to kind of delve into players. Just really quick touch on it. If this was Ty, just for all the podcast listeners, Ty just threw up the I am basketball. I guess he's watching live. You can't miss that.
It's college basketball, dude.
Hey, it's March, man. You can't miss that. So if this was a Bill Simmons rewatchable, this would be the Dion Waiters Award for like, the player who just came out of nowhere, delivered a great performance. Kind of not the best player, not the MVP, but he showed up and had a sneaky big impact. And maybe we name the award after whoever you pick here. But Jameson, who's that for you?
Yeah, I kind of think about with this. I had to think about it for a little bit. OU, has like a history of having big time players coming in. They had a lot of clout, and then obviously didn't do really well throughout the season, but then had some big moments and honestly were huge leaders for this team. 5-star, player coming out of California. We really didn't think he was going to do much for this team. But then Buki was the star. He was the Dion Waiters. Man,
oh, no.
He had so many big moments that shaped this Oklahoma team. All the fond memories, negative and positive. What few positive we had about Buki. They resonate with us when it comes down to OU football. I couldn't stop thinking about him. I tried to think of somebody else whenever I was thinking about, the couple years that he played here. But I kept thinking, remember that boneheaded hit that he had versus LSU? Remember that trash talking he had in, Lubbock? Let's think about all the stupid plays that he made. And I couldn't.
Do you remember the sledgehammer? Do you remember the sledgehammer?
Of course
what was it? Was it a pick or was it a scoop where he got like a wide open either pick or fumble recovery, and he could have taken it all the way and then just no one around him. It was at OU like week 2 or 3, and he fumbled it like at like the 20-yard line out of bounds.
I think that Kansas last year or
something like that.
I think Kansas he had it
year
stripped.
The year before.
Yeah.
He got there was one where he had a wide open touchdown and then just celebrated at like the 20 and dropped it. It was
Yes, I remember that.
That's a great pick.
He fumbled it out of bounds, yes.
I kind of love how I was just kind of going with a wild card, fun, weird player. My pick was going to be Dimitri Flowers, but I think Jameson has really redefined this award because Buki and Dion
Waiters is just perfect.
Buki is Dion Waiters. That is the best comparison I've heard in quite a while.
The Dion Waiters 3-point buzzer beater was the same thing as Brendan Riley-Hiles' pick 6 was it versus TCU.
Oh my God. Incredible. Dion's game winner against I think it was Warriors, right?
Yeah, it was. It was like their mega team, and he did the little like crossed arms, and it's obviously like a huge gif nowadays.
Yeah, for sure.
But he's a lot more lovable than Buki. I just wanted to say something about Buki.
Buki was fun, man. But anyways, Ty, who's your pick?
I love the Buki one because I feel like he is sort of a quintessential, like you're never gonna forget this guy in the Lincoln Riley era. I think no one can live up to that one, right? Like that's almost cheap. That's like, you're trying to talk about like your favorite NFL player and you pick like Tom Brady or something. Not to denigrate Jameson's pick. But
I thought I was going off the beaten path. I didn't pick a player that was like low-key good.
That's too mainstream. You could never be.
Oh, okay.
You can never be a hipster. Mine is very mainstream too, though, and I feel like it's quintessential Lincoln Riley because we're going with the offense and we're going with a guy that it sort of came from nowhere, did really good, and then just like the quintessential Lincoln Riley team was super flashy right at the start, and then just nothing was produced, and then he just sort of disappeared because he transferred, and that is Charleston Rambo. I feel like is just there's so many other guys that you could pick, right? I think Buki is a really good one, and I don't think it's good to pick the guys that ended up going, like the Heisman Trophy winners, or even like Hurts, like a lot of the quarterbacks, CD, or even like Hollywood Brown, like guys that were like actually, legitimately like really good players and really good, success stories, however you want to define it. But I love that. I think Charleston Rambo, because he just, was super flashy, had his moments, and sort of rode on that. I have this big conspiracy theory that longtime listeners will know right away about how in college, especially, being like a WR2 was a big advantage because teams don't always have a lot of good secondary players. So your best secondary is going to get matched with the best receiver, which for Rambo was usually CD Lamb, or always CD Lamb. So then you end up with some other guys that maybe aren't a perfect matchup, and you get your chance to sort of have a breakout play here and there. And that's sort of all he was known for, was just really good breakout plays and then just no production elsewhere. So for me, I got to go with Charleston Rambo just to sort of change it up and pick a lesser common player, but one that everybody should know.
Charleston Rambo is like our next big wide receiver for like 3 years straight, and he never panned out.
And he's like a junior now at Miami. He's still got like 3-4 years eligibility. I don't
somehow
the COVID thing just made everything crazy with that eligibility, sort of skip year and then red shirt and still play 4 games type thing. Guys could have like 7-year college careers now.
Are you trying to play? Are you trying to tell me Miami has used COVID to their advantage somehow? Because that does not sound like them one bit. Anyways, like I had kind of touched on earlier, mine's Dimitri Flower, just because he was always there in like the moments where you needed him. He would pop up, that Baylor 2017 game, massive. He scored, I believe, I believe he was on the receiving end of Baker Mayfield's last touchdown in that Rose Bowl, even. And I feel like he was like the perfect, like, kind of, never really going to be an NFL guy, never like your first option, but when you needed him, he was always there for you. He could be quiet entire games, but other games, well, hell, like 2017 OSU, he was a total legend. He was incredible. He was one of the biggest reasons we won that, other than Hollywood Brown, who was just, that was what a game from him. But yeah, so mine's Dimitri Flowers. I loved both of y'all's better though.
I do have to say with Dimitri Flowers, because he was a Stoops recruit, right? And then he played his first year under Stoops, I believe, right, as the head coach. I really see Flowers as sort of a continuation of the Stoops sort of fullback philosophy, which Lincoln Riley accentuated. So I guess that proves your point. But he was almost like Trey Millard, and then improve all of Trey Millard's stats and employ him even better. And that was Dimitri Flowers. And to me, that's why I think he's sort of a Stoops style guy. So shout out to Dimitri Flowers. I believe he goes to OU Law now after his little NFL career. So he's doing good.
Yeah. And I mean, Jeremiah Hall as well kind of continued that tradition as well.
Yeah.
So maybe it's
he's
probably
Hall is fully Lincoln.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Was,
but yeah. No, that might have been a little cheap pick, but either way,
no, I think that's a good one. Yeah.
It works, but I think we definitely got to rename it the Buki Award for
honorable.
Honorable mention for who, Ty?
I was going to say honorable mention to several tight ends, which is a sort of a quintessential Lincoln Riley thing. It seemed like we always had, difficult endings for our guys, whether it be concussion protocols or different, all sorts of medical things. But the employment of tight ends was an underappreciated thing that Riley brought. Something that I think he did really well at the college level, and a lot of people don't do well at sort of the blue blood college level or the big top 10 Power 5, because there's so many other flashier players.
The fun, weird little H-back was just
if you look at like the art of college football, because in the NFL, there's a lot of good, you can point to, Mark Andrews for one, really good tight ends that are employed, really well on their teams. But at the college level, that tight end being employed as sort of an offensive weapon, not just a blocker, not just a player on the field, is not something that you see with the level of mastery and artistry that Lincoln Riley did.
Well, think about Grant Calcaterra. Grant Calcaterra is, he's one of those guys, like, if he didn't, get so many concussions, that is a hell of a tight end right there. And he was great back then, as well too.
Yeah.
Flowers hurdling Texas, wonderful. The Millard hurdle in 2013, that was, I think, 2012, even better. I kind of love our fullbacks just like leaping over dudes, knocking them around, especially with Texas. But Yeah, so I do not know where Jameson went. He just kind of ran away. Wonderful stuff. So let's move on to our final topic of this, and it should be a relatively simple one. Player of the era. I think it's probably one main guy, but this is going to be one of those topics where the honorable mentions are probably more fun.
I feel like this one, you guys know who I'm going to go with, but this one might be fractured for everyone. So
Yeah, I mean, it's probably Baker Mayfield, obviously. He ushered him in. He was Lincoln's best, biggest success across the board, I would say, in terms of, the fact that he took a walk-on and molded him into a number one pick. It didn't matter what the hell he did in the NFL. That was still just a massive, massive win from Lincoln, for sure. But Jameson, who would you say the player of the era is? Are you with me on Baker?
Yeah, it's Baker time and time again. It's the storyline coming from, walk on and betting on yourself and winning the Heisman Trophy and making Lincoln who he is. Baker is Lincoln. Kyler Murray, yes, he capped off the back-to-back Heisman, the first round picks, but Baker and Lincoln are attached at the hip together and should always be in the same conversation every single time you talk about them. Just because Lincoln's new scheme took college football by fire, and it came out such a perfect time when Baker was coming through, won the quarterback job from Trevor Knight, and then put him into, the stratosphere of college football history of quarterbacks and what he did of getting in the Heisman conversation for how many years he did, and making a lot of wide receivers a lot of money around him too. I think that we have had a lot of good players, but I don't even think this is an argument.
Yeah, I think you could make an argument for a Kyler, or if you wanted to get really weird with
I don't. That's a year kind of a thing. Baker is a multiple year and turned around this team that was in a rut with Bob Stoops. We talk about Bob Stoops very highly because of what just happened, but we were in a massive rut with him.
I was about to say,
did that.
I was about to say, if you want to get weird with it, you could say Creed Humphrey.
Okay, here he goes.
I'm just saying.
No,
again,
that's not that weird.
It's not that weird. He was with him multiple years.
He was great, but his last season,
great.
Creed Humphrey, let's not forget about Creed Humphrey, and his last year as OU was supposed to be this stellar, going to be top 10 pick in the draft, and fell because he had an off year and missed a lot of things. When he started at OU, there was problems with him snapping because he was left-handed versus right-handed. That created some issues. He was not a seamless, when he went in, he was a superstar. He had his rocky roads, and obviously Baker had that too. But I obviously you're not going to argue Creed Humphrey versus Baker, but Creed was not all sunshines and rainbows.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Go ahead, Ty. I'm sorry.
Real quick. I do have to say, right, because Creed had a ton of potential, came in, sort of struggled, got really good, but I think his last year at OU, where he very much could have gone, and people were talking about top 10 period in the draft for him, and he said, no, I'm going to stay. I'm committed to this Oklahoma team and Lincoln Riley, and then ended up being worse, and cost himself potentially millions of dollars and a lot of, career stuff in the long run. I think the fact that he did that and stayed, the fact that he had a down year his last year at OU almost – I think supports Bobby's case, or whoever wants to argue that the Creed Humphrey OU case as a player. He's not my player. I'll let you guys continue to take it, but I almost think that his down year supports the case of him being an OU guy through and through.
And I think he's definitely he deserves an honorary mention. But Ty, who is your number one guy?
So my number one, right? You guys knew it was going to be it. Well, it's the best OU player currently playing in the NFL. Not Gerald McCoy. It's Baker Mayfield. So here's the thing, right? And I don't mean this to denigrate Baker either, but Kyler Murray is such an athletic talent. I think the year that he won the Heisman, you could have put him on. I'll round it. We'll say 10 teams. I think there are 10 different teams, not necessarily the top 10 teams, but I think there are 10 different teams, Kyler Murray's Heisman year, that you could have put him on, and he still would have won the Heisman. And he still would have been electric, and he still potentially could have gone number one overall. Baker Mayfield, I think, and not to denigrate Baker, obviously I'm a giant Baker stan, but everything came to, it was the perfect system, the perfect match with player and coach, and it just, everything lined up. And I don't think, I think Jalen Hurts, obviously very good, came to us from Bama, made it to the Heisman ceremony with Lincoln and Spencer and Caleb this past year, but I don't think that Baker going to the Heisman ceremony twice, winning it once, I cannot think of anyone else in college football. Maybe some weird scenario with like Urban Meyer staying at Ohio State or something there. Maybe you could have built something there, but even Bama, Clemson, wherever else, you're not Baker. I don't think is going where he went without Lincoln Riley, and he performed so well with Lincoln Riley. I think that 2017 team was the quintessential team. A lot of people argue this. I think the 2017 OU team could have beaten any other Lincoln Riley OU team in, like, say, best out of 10 matchups. I know we don't do series in college football, but to me, Baker Mayfield is the quintessential one, but also the argument for best can be made. But if you had to pick one player to define the era, it's Baker, and I think he was the one most tied to it and most not dependent on it. But I don't even know how to articulate what I'm saying. I hope you guys are.
Yeah, no,
I think it's.
I
think
understand.
It's got to be Baker. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's my thing. I think that you are kind of hinting at, like, yeah, he's the most quintessential, but Kyler, might have been more talented. Let's reverse the roles. Put Kyler and have him come to OU instead of doing the BS at A&M. And he plays multiple years before a quarterback comes after him. And I think we talk about Kyler way differently in a higher, standing than we would talk about Baker because he's that talented. The problem about Kyler, though, is what we don't remember a lot. We remember the ending of the season. He came through and won the Heisman. But at the beginning of the year, that first half of the season, we're not talking about the Heisman with him. He's turning the ball over left and right. Y'all remember the Texas game? You remember how bad of turnovers he made? We remember that awesome run that he had for a touchdown at the end of the fourth quarter to get us closer. But do you remember the stupid putting the ball into the dirt and fumbling it, bad throws? Kyler had a huge turnover problem that whole year, and it came down to where it just looped around, and he won the Heisman kind of last second that year and kind of caught us all by surprise, like, holy shit, we're about to win back-to-back Heismans. This was not like a sign, seal, deliver thing. Baker, on the other hand, was way different.
It was definitely different. And, Kyler did have his issues with, kind of overly relying on, predetermined reads, who was going to be open, that sort of stuff. But, if we want to talk about best, most complete, I think he's up there. I will say one of the things I had written down on biggest what ifs, other than the squib.
Please say Buki.
Not Buki, no. So one of the biggest what ifs.
Please say GTY.
No. GTY, obviously the MVP. One of the biggest what ifs for me is, and people forget about this, the Big 12 changed their rules to allow Baker Mayfield to play in 2017. He was about to, they were not going to honor his transfer situation, and he almost lost a year of eligibility. In which case, we would have had Kyler Murray for 2017. And I think it's a very fun what if to think about what the hell happens if we have Kyler Murray quarterbacking that 2017 team. I don't know if they're better. They might be better. But I'll say this. I don't think they win in Columbus. That was all moxie. That was all experience. And putting Kyler out there before that, I don't think they would have done that. I don't think they would have made the Rose Bowl run. But that talent, it's hard to not be intrigued with what would have happened.
I think, Kyler had 1 year, and he took over a team that was purpose-built for Baker, pretty much. I think I don't know if the modern era voters would have done it, but I think there is a not unreasonable at all case to be made that Kyler potentially could have been a back-to-back Heisman winner had he gone straight to OU with Lincoln. That's a long shot, but I think that it's not implausible that there was maybe something there. So who knows? And
Well, I mean, we'll never know.
Yeah,
It's a fun question for sure. But I got so Pump Your Blake's also brought up who's the best defensive player of the era, and brings up Kenneth Murray. It's probably right. I would say it's probably K9, not Buki.
It hurts. It hurts to say that. I mean, here's my thing with Kenneth Murray. He played a lot early, but man, did he take a while to get to a form where he looked good. It was a slow and really headache of a progression. Yes, in his last season, ended up being a first-round pick, was a great success in tackling machine. But man, was he, and he's having the problems right now in the pros. Like coming from a Chargers fan, like this guy is almost unplayable right now. But he just goes up the wrong gaps. He had a lot of problems when it comes down to IQ. How about this? How about Nick Benito? I mean, think about it. The way he's played these past 2.5 years, the way he played was there were not a lot of low points. There were a lot of high points. And he has exactly. He has more. He has a larger sample size of great plays under very, like I'm trying to put this in good words. Like he did really well for a longer amount of time than Kenneth Murray did.
Yeah, I mean, remember how much we ragged on him before the 2018? It was the 2018 preview, one of our first podcasts we ever did, Jameson. We really went in on how like Kenneth Murray kind of needs to improve. He needs to be a guy who steps up. He did, absolutely, but interesting one here. Wildcard Stephen Parker. That's interesting as well.
That's a fun one, but no. I think the thing it's hard to be a safety and be, a player of, the era. You don't really talk about safeties that much in that light. You got to be, a cornerback making big plays, or you got to be like a pass rusher.
Sneaky good one, Trey Brown.
Another guy that he went in. He was really good at the beginning, and then played like dog doo-doo in the middle of his career, and then ended up doing really well at the very end. But we're remembering, we're talking about you're talking about like how they ended up here whenever we're talking about these defensive players. But don't forget about the progression, because the progression is a big deal. These are seasons we're talking about when they were contributors to this team. And Trey Brown, he got burned all the time, even though this guy's supposed to be a 4.3 40 kind of guy. He bit way too much. He got bullied from his size. And then ended up playing a lot better when it came down to man-to-man coverage and being a playmaker in his last season before he went to the draft. But another guy that didn't have a full, complete season. Nick Benito, like I said, you can't really name too many weaknesses of him. He just came around the edge, made plays, forced fumbles, got caught whenever he was trying to get touchdowns. Like he did. Honestly, there's not many weaknesses you can say of that guy.
I mean, if we're talking about most complete, absolutely it was Benito. If we're talking about flash and moments, I would say like you're right. If we're going snap by snap, definitely not Trey Brown, but yeah, the rundown, the Ellinger sack,
the interception in the OU Texas game.
Yeah, I mean the guy was electric. If he played I think did he have the pick at Iowa State? I think if you put that guy at AT&T Stadium, he would be the best corner in the league. For sure.
he played at AT&T.
He only really balled out at AT&T or at Dallas. The Cowboys need to sign that man. I tell you what. But Ty, who do you have as your favorite?
So I think there are two answers here. One, how can you guys not mention Super Bowl champion Obo? He's been in the NFL since 2018. He's been on the injured reserve the whole time, but now he's got a ring. He's got as many rings as Patrick Mahomes and fewer weird family members. So shout out to Obo. But yeah, you just threw it up. Caleb Kelly, who I was gonna say, but I feel like Caleb Kelly it doesn't qualify here because he started playing under head coach Bob Stoops and then played the entire time, and he was injured, but he was still on the team. He outlasted Lincoln Riley. He literally played under weird situation, but played under Bob Stoops as the head coach, and then didn't play against Oregon, but was on the team as an injured player. He's the only guy that I was like furiously Googling to try to come up with some to double check, but I'm pretty sure he's the only defensive player that playing lasted the entire Lincoln Riley tenure as a head coach. Actually outlasted it. So shout out to Caleb Kelly. You guys know I don't have as much defensive meat, but I like the Obo thing. I think Obo defensively at OU obviously he's had some troubles in the NFL, and I hope he can recover and sort of build a career there. I know the average career is 5 years. He's already at like 3 down, so who knows, and persistent medical issues. But yeah, I like Caleb Kelly as an answer too. I've been a big proponent of him for his leadership. On the field stats don't necessarily represent that, but that's not always, it's a team sport. It's not a snowboard half pipe. It's not an individual performance. It's a team sport. Sometimes a dude that doesn't necessarily play that much or have that many snaps or that many highlight reel moments can still have a big impact on your team's performance. So give me Caleb Kelly for being a through and through Oklahoma Sooner. I think that's getting rarer and rarer nowadays with players. And not to go on a big tangent here, but it's why I'm a big Baker guy too, because he's a diehard OU guy. I know he went to Tech first, but everybody knows the Baker Mayfield story. He's a diehard OU guy, and that's the same thing with Caleb Kelly. He's a diehard, loyal to OU no matter what guy, and that is rare with not necessarily rare, but it's becoming less common with players nowadays. With all the different stuff that's out there and nationwide recruiting and everything else, you have guys that maybe aren't necessarily growing up as OU fans. But Caleb Kelly I think he's on OU staff now as a GA or something, still working in the athletic department. He's graduated long ago. So I will always support the guy that is an Oklahoma Sooner, born and bred for life, no matter what, over everything else. So, again, shout out to Creed Humphrey. We mentioned that earlier. So, yeah.
He's on the Soul team, I believe, which is like student athlete, kind of enrichment. It's a new system that Brenton Venables is doing, and it's going to be pretty cool. Well, not exactly.
Cars and money.
I don't really know. Nobody really knows what the Soul team does. I guess they're there to talk and hang out and be kind of like a student athlete liaison. So you never know. But yeah, he has had quite an odyssey. And as Pump Your Blakes in the comments said, this is actually known as the Caleb Kelly era now. So anyways, we have kind of gone on about this for a while, but I think we can finally put a wrap on the Lincoln Riley era. Not a bad Coach's Composites, guys. This was fun. I had a good time. If y'all like this, let us know. We might do some more. Could be fun to look into Stoops. Could be fun to look into Switzer. I would love to dig through the trash, go into Gary Gibbs, Howard Schnellenberger, my guy Gomer Jones. I don't know. Could be fun. We'll see how that goes. But, yeah, if you like this podcast, we cover OU football the entire offseason, during the season, you name it. So make sure to subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, wherever you get them. We're everywhere. If you like the audio version, that is. If you like the video version, if you want to chip in, if you want to make comments like Pump Your Blakes and 1982, subscribe to us on YouTube. Watch the visuals. You can see my ugly face attempting to talk about football. It's great. But yeah, so thank you all so much for listening, for watching. We will see you next time. It's March Madness, so we'll probably do a lot of basketball stuff. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting month. Gonna go on wedding hiatus for a bit, but this is the part where I'd normally ask if Jameson and Ty had anything left to say, but they look very tired, so I'm just going to wrap this one up. For me, Jameson and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod. We will see you next time. Have a good one, and Boomer Sooner. The show is not about to begin. It's this one. There we go. Wonderfully produced.
Leave it in the show.
Oh, I'm leaving it in the